Initiation by Elisabeth Haich. Chapter 10. First Encounter with Death. Ever since my childhood days, I had often become pale and tired around springtime. In most cases, the best remedy was to visit my Aunt Raphaela. She lived in the mountains with her family, and the combination of the bracing mountain air and the atmosphere of wisdom and religion these people lived in always cured me very quickly. I felt very happy in these quiet and noble surroundings, and would come home fresh and full of new energy and vitality. After my engagement had been dissolved, I went again to see my aunt. At that time, she was already a widow and was living with her daughter. She welcomed me with great affection, and I fully enjoyed the long-desired peace and tranquility. I felt like a kite with a broken string soaring up into infinity. What a wonderful spring it was. As usual, my aunt understood me perfectly. She expressed her views upon my decision with great insight. Afterwards, she never mentioned the matter again. In her home, I lived in absolute freedom. She let me come and go as I liked. I would roam through the hills and woods and enjoy nature to the full. During this period, when I felt completely happy in my freedom and looked forward to the future with confidence, I encountered death for the first time in my life. While hiking one day, I came to a field of grain. As my plans for marriage had recently been blasted, I stopped there and tried to picture my future. First of all, I was going to be a pianist, I told myself, like my grandmother. Then I'd get married to a healthy, happy, normal husband and have children. Then the children would grow up and I might have grandchildren. And then what? Then I'd grow old and then one day I'd have to die. Death. That is the end, the aim, the direction in which we all go. But why? Why all this trouble? Why should we practice at my piano? Why should I practice at my piano and become a great artist? Does it make any difference whether these bones covered with skin ever glide over the keys with great proficiency? If human beings have to die anyway someday, does it matter what they've done out of what they have made out of their lives? Whether they have been famous and brilliant or unknown and unrecognized, whether they've been honest or dishonest, why struggle, toil, bear children, suffer, and be happy, joyful, and sorrowful when the ultimate end is death and destruction? It would surely be much easier to die right away. This thought was so terrible and unbearable that the world around me became dark and void. I leaned against a tree and gazed down into the valley from the town, the endless houses, with many human beings who lived in them. From up there, they looked like tiny ants. All those beings lived, fought, struggled for money and love. All of them had their problems, their crosses to bear. They took everything so desperately seriously, but why? Why, when life is but a fleeting moment, when death is waiting at the end, solving all problems, terminating all suffering and joy? What are we running after? What do we attain? Death. Whether we are happy or unhappy, a king or a beggar, the end for all of us is death. Panic gripped me. No, I won't go through with it. I cannot learn, love, and live with this thought. Everything is senseless. I would rather commit suicide right now so that I won't have to die at the end of my life. A devilish, sarcastic voice laughed in my ear. That's really like you to be so stupid you want to kill yourself so you don't have to die. Do you really think you can escape death? You are here on earth in a body. You cannot just flee from here without death. If you kill yourself, the end from which you wish to save yourself only a moment ago will be imminent. Instantaneous death. Not just someday far away, but right here and now. Do you understand? As long as you are here in your body, you cannot get away unless you die. You are a prisoner. Do you understand? A prisoner. Only through the portals of death can you be released from your body. You cannot escape death. You cannot escape. I tried to gather my scattered thoughts. Yes, it was true. It was like a trap, and suicide would not help matters. It would only take me right into what I was anxious to avoid. So now what? In any case, I could take the momentary comfort in the fact that I was still very young and that death was probably still far away. I was healthy. All my ancestors had reached a great age. These facts gave me new courage. By the time I get old, I thought, a lot can still happen. The scientists who constantly discover new things about life will someday certainly discover the secret of immortality. I clung to this thought and gained the incentive and the energy to go on living, working, and wishing. I was absolutely right. Immortality was discovered, only I didn't know it at the time. That this discovering of immortality was really something I would have to do for myself, to find out that death does not exist, and that all human beings, myself included, are and always will be immortal. For everyone must discover immortality in himself and for himself. No other person can pass this truth on to him. If somebody does not believe a truth, even a perfectly obvious fact, it simply does not exist for him, no matter how many other people have discovered it already. Every human being must recognize the fact that death is nothing but life itself, and that man not only does not have to die, he is not even able to die. It is absolutely impossible. At that time, I knew nothing of all this. To me, death was a big black wall against which I had cracked my head with considerable force. Nevertheless, I was young, and so I calmed down as well as I could. I postponed the whole thing and decided, as far as humanly possible, not to think about the problem of death. Such thoughts would only weaken me, and I preferred to make plans for the future. In normal circumstances, I was used to doing everything on my own and upon my own initiative. My father had never concerned himself with the personal affairs of his children. His profession occupied him to such an extent that he had never had time to interest himself in what went on in his family. We usually only met at the family dinner table, where I never mentioned the scenes which occurred between myself and my fiancé. My mother loved me as she loved all her children, but she only began to understand me much later on, when we said goodbye to one another for good. At that time, she wanted me to become as efficient a housewife and mother as she herself was. I myself regarded this as the central aim of my life, but the way in which I wanted to achieve it was quite different from the one she envisioned. The path of my life could only be my own, and I could not accept the advice that she gave me with respect to my future. My mother wanted me to prepare myself for the role of gentle little mother, whereas I, with every drop of my blood, sought fulfillment in music and art. I was therefore left completely to my own devices, and gradually got used to thinking and acting independently, as far as this was possible in the family circle. I therefore tried to picture a future completely on my own. Without asking anyone for advice, I decided to continue my studies at the music academy and pass the final examinations so as to get a diploma. Father often said to us, "Don't be blind to the vagaries of fate just because everything's going well at present. Earthly riches can be destroyed. Whatever knowledge you acquire is yours to keep and cannot be taken away from you. Learn as much as you can and at least get a diploma of some sort. If things go well, you can leave it in a drawer, but if you run into hard times, you can earn your living with it." Oh, my father, you wonderful, unselfish, wise man. This piece of advice was the greatest treasure among all that you ever passed on to me. At that time, none of us could have imagined how we would ever get into any difficulties, and believed in secret that you were just talking like a strict pedagogue. How often I remember this advice during the war, when everything we owned was destroyed and I was stranded with a gravely wounded, disabled husband. We were saved by what I had learned, by what I carried in me, what I knew, for all the outward possessions were lost. As soon as I stood there that day on the mountain, a young, inexperienced girl thinking about my future, I had no idea what fate held in store for me, but I felt I had to follow your advice. So when I got back home that summer, I started a fresh page of my life. The most important thing was to concentrate all my energy on acquiring a piano teacher's diploma. Everything else I left in the hands of destiny.